So one of the VCs that I really like, Gary Tan, came from Y Combinator and started a company called Initialized Capital, I think it is. And he said that the companies that are growing their revenue 4 to 5x are like his A plus that's when he jumps in, and they've got a market cap of 10 million, valuation of 10 million. I mean, and so that's kind of where what his kind of entry point is. And then when they're 3x, they're kind of like his B grade stuff. And if it's like less than 2x, he kind of turns away. Is that are there any kind of specific early stage decision metrics that you like to look out for, or are you like variable between each decision, or is it a case by case basis, or?
It's a case by case basis. So I kind of wear two different hats. There's my angel investor hat, which is very much an equity play. And there's my Tractor Ventures hat, which is lending to growing startups so the founders can retain their own equity, right? They don't have to sell as many shares to sort of catalyze that growth. So the Tractor Ventures team is definitely on a different risk reward profile than the VC hat. If we talk about the equity position, the VC position, it really does vary. The two metrics that most equity investors will look out for is, as you mentioned, growth as a percentage. And the floor of what's exciting, is depending on the stage. Is probably going to be a floor of 100% if you're later stage, but as you said, 300-400% if you're early stage. And the other metric is net revenue retention. It's basically, do my customers pay me more over time?
Yeah,
because if you can combine two things together, which is fast growth from new customers and growth over time from existing customers, and you jam those two things together, and you can keep those things above the floors, and the floor for NRR is like 100%, right? Like if it's up at 110 or more, it's like, great. Our current customer base is expanding, and we're growing really quickly. Like, any VC walking by and hears you mention that, you're like, what did you just say? Like, tell me more about that. So, personally, it's all over the shop. And the earlier it is, the less likely those metrics are going to be real. It's easy to get 400% growth off $10, right? It's hard to get it off 10 mil, right?
100%. That's good. So you mentioned there how Tractor differs. You just mentioned it very slightly. Could you delve into, I had a look on the website and it looked like there was kind of two things that Tractor does sort of as their revenue model, or whatever you want to call it. I'm assuming the first one is some sort of lending with some interest to founders. And then the next one was talking about warrants. Could you go into how that works, maybe what a warrant is and if you've ever exercised it, or how that could work in a situation for Tractor?
Sure. So Tractor Ventures exists to help founders retain as much of their equity for as long as they want. So every time once you're on the VC track, you're basically selling a portion of your company to new investors every time you need more money to grow your company, with the intent that you grow a very, very large company. You end up with a much smaller percentage of it, but overall it's worth a fortune. And VCs themselves will tell you they back 1% of founders. So that business model of that type of capital is useful for 1 in 100 founders, for argument's sake. We believe that, and the analogy goes, I wrote a manifest which is called Rockets First Tractors, and the VCs back the rockets. So the rockets they're very exciting. They're on huge missions, but they're expensive and they're complex and they're prone to blowing up.
Great.
And that's the risk you take when you're building a rocket to go to Mars, right? It's like, there's a bunch are going to blow up, and hopefully one will get there eventually. Tractor Ventures was built to support, the other founders that are building companies that aren't necessarily on the growth trajectory that the rockets are. That's not to say the founders aren't ambitious. That's not to say that the companies aren't important. They're just not compatible with the venture capital business model. So the way we do it is we do revenue-based financing, which is our first product, and we do advice, which is our second product. The way you pay for revenue-based financing is via a revenue share until you pay back our capital plus a fixed known amount. So, we might be able to sell you $1 for $1.30, and you pay us back that $1.30 over the next couple of years. If you got a machine where you can drop $1 in the top and $2 fall out the bottom, in the space of 2 years, like, you should pump as many of my dollars in as you can, because you're growing your business quite quickly and you're retaining all the shares. So, the idea for any founder is to grow your business because your valuation is generally attached to your revenue, your recurring revenue, especially if you're a SaaS company. So the quicker that goes up, the bigger it is, the more valuable the company is, the more you probably want to retain. Yeah. So that's the mechanics of revenue-based finance. We loan you some money. We take a small percentage, usually around 5% of your top-line revenue until you pay it back plus a known multiple. 1.2 to 1.5, depending on things that our risk model that we run. And then the other part is the advice. So we track they're all exited founders, and our investors, of which there's 70 of them, are also founders. Some are current founders, some are exited founders, some are so big they run family offices now and they've got squillions of dollars and they invest and they back Tractor to back the founders that we back. So the way that we mitigate risk by loaning to founders is by also helping them. And that's where we earn these warrants. So a warrant is us earning the privilege, earning the right to buy some into the business at today's price sometime in the future. And it's usually got an end date of around 5 years or something like that. So for the next 5 years, we have the right to buy a small portion of your business at today's price in the future. So, we write you a loan and we actually earn that over 12 months. So we've got a team. We basically do advice and strategy and help you put that money you borrowed from us to work so your company grows. And we've got sort of a frozen in time today price of your company to buy maybe 1% or 2% of the company. Gotcha. And then in theory, we'd only exercise it generally if they're selling the company or there's an opportunity to sell the shares. So we wouldn't buy them unless there was an opportunity to sell them straight away. So that could happen in one of two ways. They go off and raise some equity from a VC, right? And we could buy and sell it all in one shot. And hopefully we're buying it at $1 and selling it at $5, so we make a little bit of profit. Or they get acquired and everyone's buying up all the shares. And we're like, we got to exercise. We got to turn those warrants, which is an option to buy, into a share, and then that share gets sold straight away. Yeah. So it's the difference between, and the way we make money on the loans is we borrow money at a price and we lend it at a bigger price because we borrow it from people who don't want to deal with founders. They're happy to deal with us because we borrow it in chunks of tens of millions and then we go and lend it out in chunks of hundreds of thousands. Same as you divvy up anything, when you divvy it up in a smaller bit, you get to put your margin on it, and that's how we run our business.
That's awesome.
So the loans pay for our team and the equity over time will hopefully bring us lots of returns. And as we grow a big book of Tractor revenue-based finance loans and helping founders over and over, and hopefully they come back because we've helped them do it and they want to go again, then that's how our business works. It's pretty straightforward. So the venture business is, invest $10 in 10 different companies and one of them might return $100 and eight of them might go to zero and be worth nothing, right? And those founders who are doing those companies are also have to go find something new to do. Yeah. We're a lending business, so we lend $10. We hope that 9.5 of them come back with their margins on top. So our $10 aren't going to turn into $1,000. So our return profile is less than a VC, but there's also, we take less risk. The founders who are paying us back are paying us before the equity holders are getting their returns, right? Because they're paying us back every month as a portion of their revenue. So there's a risk for every dollar that a founder takes in. They must be really aware of the business model behind that dollar because that's the promise they're making, right, to the future. In the future, we're going to return 100 for every dollar gives. We think we can give them $100 back, right? But I'd have to pay them in the meantime. But when we get there, it's going to be a lot. In Tractor's case, it's like we're going to pay you $1.30 for that buck over the next couple of years, but the shares are all mine. Like I'm going to retain the long-term value. I didn't have to sell them to anyone to do that. That's the difference between the two business models. That's the difference between why a founder would use some debt or equity. And up until recently in Australia, founders, basically you had to sell shares to get the capital in, to grow your business and hand off the value to the new shareholders, which is fine. And we believe that the future is actually a combination of both. Is that if you're, no company is going to run entirely on debt and no company is going to run entirely on equity. There's a blend for both of them in there for most companies sort of going forwards.
That's really cool. Thanks for explaining that. It's super informative.